In one of the greatest uses of viral marketing of all time, Matt Reeves and JJ Abrams crafted the movie Cloverfield, an interesting blend of the monster movie and found footage genre that left us with a lot of questions when it comes to the lore, the characters, and especially the Cloverfield monster itself. So naturally, everybody expected some sort of follow-up or sequel to be on the way, but then years passed and there was seemingly nothing coming. But then, something crazy happened.
Something's coming.
We got a trailer for a mysterious new entry, but this one wasn't found footage, didn't seem to have the monster anywhere in the trailer, but it was intriguing. Oh boy, I hope this movie is coming out soon. Wait a minute, it's coming out in 2 months? With this movie, we got led down a whole new ARG about how Howard was part of the Typewriter company, working on oil rigs in the ocean, which means that this must connect to the satellite at the end of the last movie. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry, it's not really necessary for the movie whatsoever, but I'm going to explain it anyways. It's an interesting rabbit hole to go down, and if you didn't enjoy this movie, maybe with all the additional information, you will now. In this video, I'm going to be going over the 10 Cloverfield Lane ARG, give my breakdown and thoughts on the movie itself, and the potential future of this franchise. But before I get into that, let me go over the sponsor of this video, me. And all my new merch. That's right, now I've got all kinds of shirts, sweatshirts, stickers, coffee mugs, whatever you might want, I'm sure it's there. So use the link at the top of the description if you want to support me a little extra and get a nice new comfy piece of clothing or decoration for yourselves. There's a 35% sale starting today that goes for another 3 days, so make sure you stop on by and check everything out. I very much appreciate it, but without further ado, let's head on down into the bunker, build ourselves a hazmat suit, and Molotov our way into 10 Cloverfield Lane. It's worth noting at the beginning that this was originally not a Cloverfield film. It was originally a movie titled The Cellar, but they changed the title in order to increase its reach, which I honestly think was a good move, because without it, I and so many other people like me would have probably never heard of it. But that's very apparent from the opening scene. This one is far different. I mean, it's not found footage for one thing, but it does give us everything we need to know that this is a JJ Abrams production. There's the lens flares, the Kelvin gas station, and plenty of mystery. We hear the reason why Michelle left, and the voice in the phone sounds familiar. Is that? Yeah, it is. It's Bradley Cooper. Well, surely they didn't get an actor of his caliber just for a simple phone call. He must be a big part of this movie's plot. Michelle gets in a car accident. I bet you he comes and saves her. He's gotta have a big role, right? Michelle wakes in the bunker, and it's here where we spend basically the whole movie and see things from her point of view. There's some creepy guy basically holding her hostage and captive, saying it's for her own good, but this dude's a creep. We obviously don't believe him. Speaking of this dude, let's talk about Howard, played by the phenomenal John Goodman. I remember watching this when it came out and there were talks of him getting an Oscar nomination for the role, which I knew wouldn't happen at the time due to the genre of this film, but it was cool the conversations even started in the first place, and I think they're super well earned. He plays this role excellently. We're super afraid of him because you never quite know what he's gonna say or do. Even just the way he talks and his tone just freaks you out.
If you like to watch films, I have some on DVD and VHS cassette.
Until we eventually do want to trust him, but no matter what, we know there's definitely a screw or two loose upstairs. He says that she's down here because there's some sort of war going on above ground, how it could be the Russians or the North Koreans or maybe even the Martians, and it's at this point we know this guy is just crazy. This movie does such a great job at managing expectations and keeping things grounded for a while. We're right there next to Michelle as she's hearing and experiencing everything for the first time, so basically whatever she's feeling, the audience is feeling. We first think of this film as somebody who's been kidnapped and then she's trying to escape, and in these times we immediately connect with Michelle because she's making the absolute best out of a terrible situation. She's very smart, she goes about things very carefully, and it's easy to root for a character in a horror movie that's smart. It's only when we meet Emmett that we start to think differently about everything, but Michelle knows that Howard's the one who dragged her here. Emmett says that he was begging to get into the shelter, and we don't really see anything too bad about him, so perhaps he's telling the truth. Also on this rewatch, I actually really liked and related to Emmett quite a bit. He's trying to make things much more fun and lively with the conversations. It seems that Michelle is hitting on him, and he's like, hell yeah, why not? And he even ends up taking the entire blame at the end of the movie. He says he has no clue what YOLO means, but he hears all the kids saying it, so it must be cool. That was a funny line to me in high school, but now I hear all kinds of strange words that I don't understand, so I could easily say that about any new words that I hear you crazy kids saying today. Maybe there actually is something bad outside, but also maybe Emmett is some sort of plant. Maybe he's in on this whole thing and the world above them is perfectly fine. There's so many different thoughts going through Michelle and the audience's head that we need to see everything for ourselves to actually believe it. So Michelle puts on this wonderful performance, sees her opportunity, and makes for her escape when we see that Howard is actually telling the truth. This follows with the low point in the movie in both our and Michelle's perspective, but then life in the bunker doesn't actually seem too bad. Howard confesses that he was the one responsible for her crash, so I guess he can't be too bad. And after that, he actually doesn't seem like that bad of a guy. In terms of apocalyptic scenarios, watching movies and eating food and playing games isn't all that bad. Except even when we realize that the world is in some sort of apocalypse now, there is still something off about Howard. He talks about his daughter Megan and how she's no longer with them, except Emmett and Michelle find out that Megan was just some girl that he actually kidnapped. I think this reveal and the plot in general gives us such a satisfying overall story because we've been shocked at the previous reveal that there actually is something going on, but we were also right to be worried about Howard, and our radar isn't just broken, there is something wrong with this dude. And then the film turns into horror because they're stuck with this kidnapper and presumed murderer in a bunker underground. Michelle and Emmett then go through an entire prison break plan that goes through Howard unnoticed until it isn't, and then we see his true character come out and his true intentions to make Michelle his new daughter. But just as she has throughout the film, Michelle gets the upper hand on Howard and heads to the surface where we see that all of this was actually fake until it's not.
Come on.
Now, this is where the movie loses some people, but I am not one of those people. There are so many hints and clues about the finale, the radio in the car, talking about nationwide blackouts on the coast, the first scene in the bunker, the lights flicker, and then there's obviously the scene that was in the trailer, which makes the whole shelter shake, and Howard talks about the Martians and how they could be here on 2 separate occasions. I think all of this stuff is actually sufficient evidence for this big third act reveal, and I honestly cannot understate how much I love this reveal. When Howard talks about the Martians and the power they have, we think he's just crazy, but for him to actually be right and for this to be the third act to an otherwise slow and psychological film is just so out of left field. It's like that scene at the end of that Goosebumps episode where they're at summer camp.
Where are we going?
Very far away. A place called Earth.
Research tells us the aliens there are pretty dangerous and unpredictable.
It's honestly crazy just how different the third act of this movie is compared to the first 2, but I actually really like that. I also like the designs of these aliens and how it was different from what we expected out of a Cloverfield movie. This is also the second movie in which Mary Elizabeth Winstead kills a monster by throwing an explosive in its mouth. And if I had a nickel for every movie that she does this in,
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
Emmett talks about Howard and how he was in the Navy and how he's a black belt in conspiracy theory. This is sufficient evidence for everything that happens in the film and Howard's characterization, but in reality, it goes much deeper than that. The first Cloverfield film is such a cult classic because of its marketing and all the stuff that you, the viewer, can do research on, and that essentially makes people like me care more about the movie I'm watching. 10 Cloverfield Lane had a similar ARG, or alternate reality game, attached to it, and it's more or less specifically geared towards Howard. In the movie, we know that Howard is ex-military. He worked on satellites in space, and a bit about his personal life with Megan, but we were constantly questioning whether or not he's telling the truth, or just some crazy conspiracy theorist. Well, his theory on the Martians, or the aliens coming to Earth and having weapons and technology that's far more advanced than what we have, ended up being true, so perhaps Howard isn't such a nut job after all. Through the ARG, we learn that Howard was employed by a company called Bold Futura, a subsidiary of the company Tagruato, which, if you don't know, is the company responsible for the deep sea drilling in the first film that woke up the actual Cloverfield monster. While Tagruato was focused on the sea, Bold Futura was focused on space, and it seems whatever proof that Howard found of an attack that was imminent changed him. He built the bunker and tried to reconnect with his estranged daughter, Megan. Yes, Megan was a real person, it was his actual daughter, and what he said about her was all true. But what we didn't know was how he tried to contact her to get her to come down into the bunker with him, and how her mother told him that he'd never see his daughter again. This presumably led Howard down a darker path, to kidnapping the girl in town, to then kidnapping Michelle, all because he wanted a new daughter. The story of Howard is actually pretty tragic. This is very clearly a smart man with a lot of issues, and he takes those issues out on those around him so that way he can try to live the life he wishes he could have. The aliens, on the other hand, are much more mysterious. We don't know why they're attacking Earth, what they want, why they're here now, where they're from, absolutely nothing. At least, we didn't, until the sequel for this film came out, The Cloverfield Paradox. The plot of that film revolves around a group of scientists who go to space in order to solve the issue of global warming on their planet. They bring a device with them to reverse this problem, except the device doesn't work properly, and instead it displaces people and aliens from all kinds of different universes into different places and other universes. Hence why the aliens are here in 10 Cloverfield Lane. But even with that explanation, there's still a lot of questions regarding these aliens, and unless we get any sort of further sequel or explanation, those answers might remain a mystery. Cloverfield could have been a sort of Twilight Zone franchise with all kinds of different movies, different monsters, and different time periods, and I think that's exactly what they were trying to do with this one, and a whole roadmap of possible Cloverfield films, but they changed their minds when they introduced the Cloverfield Paradox. A film that tried to connect the previous two, a film that was met with mixed reviews, and now this franchise is in some sort of strange limbo. But with a new one coming out soon, that all could change. God, I hope it's gonna change. But I absolutely love this movie. I think the twist in the third act is among the greatest twists I've ever seen. It works for me on all levels. I can see why it doesn't for some people, and that sucks, but I love it. And even before that, we get a gripping and engaging mystery thriller with great performances and characters. This movie is a 10 out of 10 for me personally. I couldn't wish for anything else. Sure, the movie has flaws, I recognize and understand those, but this has always been a fun rewatch, and it's by far the best Cloverfield movie so far. What are your thoughts on 10 Cloverfield Lane? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this. Check out my other Cloverfield videos and my new merch store. The link is in the top of the description. Special thanks to my channel members, and I'll see you all in the next one.
Yeah.